Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Global Millennial Model UN School in batch 13 in our second class. Now, in our second class, we will talk about position paper. Yeah. This is one of the most important documents in MUN, not only because it is required for you to do it, but the paper itself will help you understand the issue at hand. Position paper, we'll talk about the definition, how we should make the position paper, and the example of position paper itself. I will send the sample of the document in the group, and I will also share screen the paper itself so you can understand the theory as well as the practical implementation of that theory. Now, about position paper. Today we will talk about and discuss about two questions. The first one is definitely what is a position paper? And secondly is the reason why we need to write a position paper so that you understand the urgency behind the formulation of position paper. And also you understand the basic concepts, the basic fundamentals about position paper. Now, the definition itself for position paper, as you can see on the screen, it is a paper in MUN that is prepared by the representative or the delegate. So you will be a delegate, you will represent a country, and you will make a position paper as that country. So you will not make the position paper alongside other countries. No, this is a paper that is made by one delegation, which means it is made individually. Okay, and it is submitted to the conference, the committee of the MUN before the conference starts. So the paper will not be discussed during the conference. It will be submitted before the conference. However, during the conference, you can still read the position paper and use your paper as a reference for your speeches. So if you want to read the position paper for your GSL or for your moderated caucus, it is allowed, but the position paper will not be debated. So we will not debate about Indonesia's position paper. We will not debate about Germany's position paper. Okay, because it will be submitted before the conference, and some conferences, they allow others to read each other's position paper, but most conferences, as far as I'm concerned, in Indonesia, we cannot read each other's position paper because it is confidential and we can only read our position paper. That's position paper, right? So what is inside the paper? We already understand when it is submitted. We understand who makes the position paper. But what about the content of the position paper? What is contained in that paper? What kind of details are needed to be put in that paper? The answer is that position paper summarizes the policy as well as the stances of the topic that is currently being discussed. For example, if the discussion is about nuclear weapons, the position paper will definitely talk about nuclear weapons. However, it will not only talk about nuclear weapons in general, it will also talk about nuclear weapons from the perspective of the country who makes the position paper. For example, if I am representing the country of Singapore, in my position paper, in my country's position paper, I will write about nuclear weapons first, what has been happening about nuclear weapons, what is the most recent topic about nuclear weapons for around one paragraph. And then the next paragraph, I will talk about my country's position, which is Singapore, towards the nuclear weapons itself. So if, for example, Singapore opposes nuclear weapons, it does not agree with nuclear weapons, then in my paper, I will talk about how dangerous nuclear weapons are, and I will talk about the reason why Singapore does not agree with nuclear weapons proliferation in Southeast Asia, for example. And after I write the reasons why we don't agree, I will then write about what has been going on in my country, what kind of steps that have already been taken by my country. For example, Singapore has been proposing an agenda to prevent nuclear weapons by, for example, initiating a conference on nuclear weapons non-proliferation in ASEAN, for example. Singapore has been notable, has been well known for example, for initiating initiatives in regards to prevent nuclear weapons with other countries outside of ASEAN, for example. So these are the actions that you put in the position paper because it highlights Singapore's address towards nuclear weapons. right? So remember the first paragraph, it talks about nuclear weapons in general, the topic itself. The second paragraph, which is the middle paragraph, the content of the paragraph, it highlights Singapore's actions towards nuclear weapons, as well as Singapore's stances. What makes Singapore do not agree with nuclear weapons? Everything about that is put in this particular paragraph. After that, the next paragraph talks about the solution. So Singapore will address the problem, and then it will propose solutions based on how Singapore addresses the problem. For example, Singapore believes that when it comes to nuclear weapons, we have to have a dialogue, an international dialogue, where every country is involved, both nuclear weapons countries as well as non-nuclear weapons countries. Singapore believes that this is one of the best solutions that we can do. Thus, it should be put as a solution. Hence, you put that on your third paragraph. You put that on your final paragraph. In the solution, you say about how important it is to involve both nuclear weapons and non-nuclear weapons countries in a form of an international dialogue. And then you state the reason. Because if we don't involve them, then it will be a contradictive action because we are proposing a solution that is not practically visible, for example. So you explain the reasons, the backgrounds behind that solution, right? But apart from explaining the solution, apart from explaining the reasons of that solution, you also explain about why your solution is actually better than past solutions in the past, right? You explain why this solution is better compared to the 2010 solutions. You explain why the solution is better than the solutions that were brought 2 decades ago. So you explain this novelty of your solution. If you think that the solutions that were brought 10 years ago, 15 years ago are still relevant to this day, you can put this as a solution again. But this time you state the reason why that solution needs to be implemented again in this particular problem in nuclear weapons, right? After you re-explain why this solution needs to be implemented again, you also state perhaps the context of the solution. Maybe you should add more new things to that solution. For example, 10 years ago, we already had an international dialogue. This time we want to have an international dialogue again, but this time what makes it different is that the international dialogue will present a document containing solutions that are legally binding to the countries, for example. So back in 10 years ago, there's already an international forum, but it's only a dialogue. It's only a communication, a networking forum. It's only a conference, but it does not have any output that is practically implementable. But this time you also propose a solution about international forum, but this time you propose that after the international forum is finished, we will have to have a document containing the solution that all countries have to follow, for example. So that's how you make a position paper. You either propose something new, you either propose new solutions, or you propose past solutions that are the same, but this time you add new details, you add new aspects towards that solution. Okay, so that's how you differentiate between solutions that are new and solutions that are implemented that mirroring solutions 10 years ago, from 10 years ago. Okay, so that's the definition of position paper. Now we will move on to the basic aspects themselves. So again, as usual, if you have any question, feel free to unmute your mic. Feel free to write the question on the Zoom chat box. I will read the question alongside the presentation itself so that I can answer while also explaining the position paper. Verse 1, Kapdur, how many pages do we have to put in our position paper? Usually we only have a maximum of 2 pages, right? But usually most conferences, some of them, they regulate that there should only be 1 page, but some conferences allow more than 1 page. For example, 2 pages, 3 pages. Usually it's only 2 pages, right? But it sometimes does not include the reference inside that requirement. So if it says minimum 1 page or maximum 1 page, you have to ask the committee or you have to read the guide, whether it also includes the reference list, the bibliography, the references that you see on the back of a paper. Whenever you see a book, whenever you read a journal, right, in campus or in school, you might see the reference list at the back, at the final part, at the final page of the document. Position paper also has that. Position paper has a reference list, which are the references that you use to make the paper. Because when you make a position paper, you are not only relying to your thoughts only, right? You also rely to facts, to reports, to research that you find from others' experiment, that you find from others' activities, that you find from others' journals, right? So whenever you cite, whenever you take something that is not yours, you have to put a reference to that detail, right? Stating that you have this fact, that you obtain this fact from this particular person or from this particular institution. The year that it is taken or the date of the publication, you have to put all of that, just as if you were making a paper in your campus or in your school. All right. The content of the position paper, it contains two aspects. The first one is national stance. The second one is the solution, right? So you have to present the way the position paper can best explain the current dynamics of the issue, as well as explaining how that solution will be implemented. All right. The last one is the when and where. As explained earlier, it is submitted before the conference, which is before day one. For example, the first day of the conference will be held on January 23rd. Then it should be submitted at January 22nd, or maybe at January 23rd, but in the morning. So it depends on the committee's policy. The where it is submitted definitely by email. You send it as a PDF document to the chairs or to the committee. You have to ask the email address, the subject of the email, and all of the technical details that are very likely to be different in every conference. All right, so that's the when and where. General rule, contents, and when and where. Any question before I move on to the next slide? Nope. Any question? So far, for those of you who have just joined, we talked about position paper and the basic details of position paper. The presentation material itself has already been shared to the WhatsApp group, and we also have shared the sample of the position paper. So we will present it later. We will try to showcase you the paper itself, the example of the paper itself, so that you understand the theory as well as the practical implementation of that theory. All right. That's the basic details of the position paper. I guess since there's no question, I will move on to the next slide, which is this part. The reason why we have to write a position paper. The first one is eligibility for awards. As you have understood, MUN, besides that it's a conference, is also a competition. There's the first champion, the second champion, the third champion, right? But we call it in different terms. We call it best delegate, which refers to the first rank, the most outstanding delegate, which refers to the second rank, honorable mention, which refers to the third rank, and then there is other award called best position paper. This is an award for categorical ranks, which refers to the delegate that the chairs think that has the best position paper, right? So if you aim to win the best position paper, definitely you're gonna have to write best position paper. But if you do not aim for that award, then it's fine. However, there are conferences that whether you want to win or not, you still have to write a position paper, because if you don't, then you will not be eligible for all awards, right? So there are some conferences with different policies. You have to make sure that your conference policies is understood. Okay. All right. The second part is to help your understanding. So even though you don't aim for the awards, you don't aim for the MUN awards, a position paper will still help you understand about the particular issue. It will help you outline the structure of your country's interests, your country's stance, your country's solution. And then with that position paper, it will help you craft a new solution based on the current discussion. Remember that when you enter into MUN, you are talking about new solutions with other countries, right? So it's not about you trying to tell everyone that my solution, that your solution is the best. No, you're there to share your side of the story. You share the perspective of your country. However, you are open to solutions from other countries as well. After that, once all countries share their perspective, you will then talk about which solution is the best, and that solution will be put in the final draft resolution. All right, so you can always refer to the current discussion as the reference, but do not forget that your country has an interest, right? Has a stance that should not be violated. All right, so you do not sacrifice your perspective just because you want everyone to agree on you. No, you have to have a very firm stance about which to defend and which solution to sacrifice. All right, so it will help you understand and map your national interest, resolution, as well as the background issue of the problem. All right, the next one is the structure. There are four structure. First one is background, definitely, as we have discussed earlier. You have to describe the issue first, but in a very efficient way. So your job is not to become a history teacher. No, you do not explain the history of the problem. For example, the problem is COVID-19. You do not explain about how COVID-19 started. You don't go that far, right? Just describe it in the most efficient way. And what kind of detail that this current MUN wants you to focus on. For example, it's about COVID-19, but it's about vaccination of the COVID-19. So you only have to talk about the vaccination itself. But it also does not mean that you have to describe every detail of the vaccination status. So, Kabdur, so which aspects do we have to discuss if we don't have to go that far? There is no answer to that because it depends on your country, right? Every country has their own perspective, right? Maybe this aspect of the problem is relevant, but to this country, this aspect is not relevant. For example, for Indonesia, for example, vaccination, the way we vaccinate people is relevant. But to other countries, maybe it's not relevant. What's relevant is about whether we should vaccinate or not, right? The way we vaccinate is it's a matter of domestic problem, domestic issue that should not be discussed in international level, right? As Indonesia, if you think that the way we vaccinate is important, then in that MUN, you're gonna have to fight for your country's stand, saying that it is important for us to talk about the way we vaccinate as well, right? So focus only on the important things, right? Such as the reason, the obstacle, the process. You don't need to, present a whole National Geographic way of telling or explaining the issue of the problem. All right, so that's topic background. The second part, the second structure is past action. You have to describe the past solutions that are already implemented in the past. You have to present or you have to explain, is there any international community or international organization that has already addressed this problem? And if there is already an organization doing that, what kind of loopholes, what kind of failures, what kind of lessons that we can learn from so that in the future, we do not repeat the same mistake. So you analyze the loopholes, what made them success, what made them failure. If it failed in the past, then how do we make it succeed this time? If it already succeeded in the past, how do we make sure that it still succeeds at this time? So that's the past action part of the structure, which is basically explained in the second paragraph. After you explain that in the next paragraph, but sometimes also in the same paragraph, you explain your country stance. do your country disagree with this, or do your country does not agree with this? You have to explain this, right? Does your country agree? Does your country not agree? You have to explain that on the part of this country stance, which is why you have to make a research on how your country puts its perspective on this issue to consequently understand how you represent the state. If your country disagrees, then you have to explain why this issue should be treated in this way or this way, right? So in MUN, there is no right and wrong because every country has their own perspective of right and wrong, right? Maybe this particular reason is right from this country's perspective, but it may be wrong from other countries' perspective. So you cannot just, ask questions whether, can we do this? Can we do that? The answer depends on your country's interest, right? So you have to research it as thorough as possible about your country's interest first. And then after your country's interest, you're gonna have to research about what will likely be the solution that will be accepted by as many countries as possible in that MUN. Right? The final part, which is the solution, it definitely is about the way we tackle the problem, right? Solution means that the methods that we use so that the problem will go away, what kind of actions, what kind of activities that we can do to make the problem go away. For example, it's about COVID, the solution can be vaccination, but before vaccination starts, we have to have social distancing and all that. So you have to propose the solution that will be likely helping you to make the problem go away. Remember the karma. So what is karma? Karma, all right, I see that it's not elaborated yet, but I will write it here. Karma or question a resolution must answer. Right. So this is karma. In the previous class, we understand that there is a study guide, right? Just remember study guide, right? Study guide is definitely a guide that the chairs made for you to read in regards to the topic and also the MUN in general. What kind of topics that we need to discuss, what kind of approaches that we need to consider, what kind of solutions that probably will have to be considered by all countries. So this is the study guide. In the study guide, it contains karmas or questions or resolution must answer. So when you enter an MUN, you only focus on the karma, right? Do not focus on things that the MUN is not discussing, right? If we talk about vaccination and focusing on, for example, the way we spread vaccination, then it will be irrelevant if you talk about whether vaccination is allowed or not, because the focus of the problem is already how we spread the vaccination, which means that we already have to agree from the first time, right? So remember the karmas, remember the questions or resolution must answer, right? This is the structure, 4 parts, remember, background plus action, country stance, and solution. And the structure is very important for you to follow, very important for you to remember as well. Remember to have all of these 4 in your paper, in your position paper. If one of you has already joined MUN, probably you will understand that the structure of this position paper will help you map your national interest during the discussion, right? So whenever a country, for example, asks about your country stance, you can already read it in your position paper. If a country asks about your opinion about a problem or a solution, you can already read it in the position paper. But remember, position paper does not mean that it forces you to stay consistent only with your perspective. Remember that you are entering an international forum where everyone is sharing their opinion. That's why not only that you have to share yours, you have to listen from others' perspective, right? Because if every country is being selfish, if every country only wants their solutions to be the one that are accepted, then there will be no solution accepted because every country will disagree with each other, right? The function of a United Nations, the purpose of a United Nations is to gather all of these perspectives. We debate on it, and after we debate on it, hopefully we will find a solution that is acceptable for every country. That's the function of the United Nations. So the art of MUN is that you have to be selfish. Yes, of course, you have a country's interest and you have to protect it at all costs. However, you have to find a way in which that your country's interest is protected, but at the same time, you can still accommodate, right? You can still accommodate other solutions to be implemented in your country without violating your country's interests, right? How do we do it, Kapdur? How do we make sure that we protect our interests, but we also do not we don't be too selfish, for example? Well, the answer again, there is no exact answer on it. I cannot say the answer is A, B, C, no, because it depends on the situation. It depends on the complexity of the discussion. Is the discussion being too hard, for example, or is discussion being too furious for all countries to participate? Or maybe the discussion is, the topic is not really that sensitive, the topic is not that controversial, so that everyone can agree on one thing. It really depends on how the discussion goes, right? So it is a one-time experience for every delegate. Every delegate will experience different activities in MUN, right? They will perceive it in different ways, right? Maybe for some delegates see that, oh, this is very challenging. I really love having discussions and debating with one another. But some delegates may see it from a different way. For example, after I'm really scared with the discussion, I cannot present my solution because I'm too shy to explain to all of these countries that I have a different perspective on this particular topic. It's going to be different for every delegate, and we cannot blame that. We cannot blame that because every delegate has their own experience, right? Every delegate has their own way of dealing with discussions. So we cannot use the same solution for every delegate. So what kind of solution that we can use then? What kind of way that we can use to make sure that our country is protected, but then we can still accommodate other people, other countries' perspective? My answer to this question will be that for you to first analyze how flexible your country's interest is. Can your country's interest change, or is it fixed? Is it fixed in a way that it cannot be changed 100%? Or maybe it can be changed, but you can only reduce it to 95%. The remaining 5% is the area of negotiation where you can change. So you have to analyze from your country's perspective first. After you analyze from your country's perspective, you analyze others' country's perspective. Can this particular solution be implemented in my country and not violate my country's interests? Right. So you use a two-way analysis on this. The first one, you analyze from your country's perspective. The second one, you analyze as if you were other country's perspective. All right. And also that's how you structure your position paper, right? You have to write in a way that everyone understands your position, but at the same time, you protect your national interests. You protect the core stance of your country. Are you agreeing on this particular issue 100%? Or are you only agreeing for 75%, for example? So you have to analyze it from these varying perspectives. Kapdur, how do we know the percentage of that way of agreeing with particular solution? There's no particular percentage. It's just an example, right? So you should not Google search about, is Singapore agreeing on this, or maybe how many percentage that Indonesia agrees on this. There will be no answer to that. The Google will not provide you that. So this is just your way of doing your research, right? So you have to be convinced, you have to be confident about your country's interests, and not only being confident, you also have to back all of these perspective with a scientific journal. Back this with a government document that can support your argument. All right, so do not conduct a research based on feelings. Okay, conduct a research based on factual events, based on factual statistics, right? That you can find on news media, that you can find on article journals, that you can find on government reports, for example, or from NGO reports. So find as many facts as possible. Make sure that it best represents your country's interests. All right, that's about the structure. I know there's too many details. I will now stop share on the presentation, and I will share to all of you the example of the position paper. Wait. This one, I think it's already visible from your screen. But before I continue, maybe any question from anyone about position paper? Any questions so far? Okay, I see one. Wait. All right. So, should position paper answer all the karmas? Yes, everyone. A position paper must answer every karma. Every question's resolution must answer. So make sure you write everything based on the karmas. All right. What you should not do is to answer something that is not based on karma. So since a position paper is very, very compact, right? It's only 2 pages, it's only 1 page, and you have to write everything down. Make sure only provide the most relevant information. All right. Do not put information that is not relevant. Only focus on the topic of the problem. All right. So that's about the karma about position paper. Now, okay, I will move on to the position paper example while I wait for other questions if there's any. This is an example from a country of Austria in the Council of United Nations General Assembly with a topic of global migration. All right. So in a position paper, sometimes we put what we call as a national, wait, I will not say national. It's about a quote, but it represents the national interest of that country. For example, Austria, this particular delegate of Austria is quoting a sentence from Sebastian Kurz, which is the former chancellor of Austria. So once said that stopping and returning illegal migrants to their countries of origin must become standard procedure. So by guessing from this quote alone, we can already understand the stance of Austria. Austria believes that when it comes to returning illegal migrants to their countries of origin, it is something that should be considered as a standard procedure. So generally, we can agree that Austria agrees on returning illegal migrants to their countries of origin, right? Just by looking at this quote. The question is, Abdur, what is the function of this quote? The function of this quote is basically just to make the position paper more beautiful, right? But most importantly, to make it more attractive to the chair, right? Because it makes the position paper more enjoyable to read. All right. Now I will move on to the first paragraph. I will use the yellow color. As I have explained earlier, and as we have discussed earlier, in the first paragraph, we have to talk about the general perspective of the issue. Remember, the issue at hand is global migration. All right. So in the first paragraph, we talk about migration itself. What's the definition of migration? And what's the current number of migration? How many illegal migrants are there in the world right now? And what makes it a problem? What kind of problems that arise if we let migration to loose, for example, or if we don't regulate migration in a way that every country has their own standard procedure, for example, right? As you can see on the green color, right? The insecurity caused by migrant, right? Violence of the immigration laws. These are the consequences if we do not regulate migration, right? That's the first paragraph. The second paragraph, the one in blue, is the past action, right? Now focus on the pink color. The United Nations has already addressed through several conventions. Now this is the past action, right? The UN already has conventions on this issue, right? But how and then after you present and explain the past actions, you explain about the loopholes, right? What makes the past actions not relevant anymore, or maybe you explain why the solutions cannot be implemented anymore, maybe because it has problems, or maybe it's becoming irrelevant to current issues. You explain that. Now you see on the pink color, the treaty will not allow categorical detention of illegal immigrants, right? So the treaty itself was a solution at the time in the past. However, there's something that this treaty cannot do, that it should do previously, right? It should allow categorical detention. However, it cannot do it right now, right? So that's the reason why it's becoming a problem. All right. All right, so I will stop it right here, right? I'm gonna let you read from the first paragraph to the final second paragraph. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes to read, all right, while I wait for all of you to finish reading, because this is a lot of sentences, all right? So read from the word migration, the green one right here, and then after the last sentence of sovereignty in the second paragraph, all right? And then we will talk from there, right? 3 minutes. All right, so I hope everyone finishes reading. So that is how you structure your first two paragraphs in position paper, right? First one is about the definition. Second one is about your past actions, right? Past actions in this particular matter is past action that is made by the committee, right? Or the United Nations in general. The past action that is done by your country is explained on the next paragraph, which is this part, right? I want you to focus on the green color and also the yellow. You can see that the first sentence talks about whether Austria has done something about migration, which is through the Asylum Act. Austria has already made the law on migration through the Asylum Act. Secondly, Austria also explains why this particular solution by Austria is good, is recommended for other countries. You can see that sentence by this particular part, through this particular part. It is due to Austria's experience that it becomes part of the guest worker system. Migrant worker was actively encouraged to come and join the workforce in Austria, right? And then they are entering Austria legally and follow the mechanism of positive law, right? So if you see on the brown color, these are the details that Austria puts in its position paper to explain about why the solution is good or why the solution is recommended for others, right? And then also you don't forget to put a reference, right? For example, this final sentence, Austria puts note number 5, footnote number 5, and it basically has the information from here, right? From a book named Asylum Policies and Protests in Austria that were authored by Nina Merhot and Farina Stern, right? So that's the third paragraph. After you already read the first 2 paragraphs previously, you understand about how Austria structures the paper, right? Now it is now part of the final paragraph, which is the solution, right? In this regard, Austria calls the solution the Jogja Agreement, right? So more details on this for your information. You have the ability to brand your solution, right? So instead of just presenting solution, for example, first you have to do this, second you have to do that. In MUN, you can brand your solution with names, right? So for example, Austria used the term Jogja Agreement to propose the solution. All right. So what is Jogja Agreement? This is included in 3 phases. First one, the establishment of international data collection. Phase 2 is the international temporary entry permission. And phase 3 is the establishment of safe deportation of immigrant standards. So you have to explain every single part of this particular solution, right? And after that, you can explain about why this is important to be implemented. All right. And after that, you put the final closing paragraph, right? And then you put the reference list on the final part of the page. All right. So that's about the sample of the position paper. I hope everyone understands about the gravity of the complexity of the paper and the general understanding, right, about the position paper. All right. Any questions so far about position paper? Feel free to chat me, whether publicly or maybe you want to send a private chat through the Zoom chat box. It's also allowed. Any question will be very welcomed. All right. Okay, I'll wait for maybe 1 minute for any question about position paper. All right, no question. Oh, okay, I see one. Is it okay if we just put all the references at the end of the paper without the little number in each sentence like in page 1? Yes, it's okay. This is what we call as footnotes, right? Note that has the function as if it is a foot, right? It's put under the page. However, some conferences allow the footnotes not to be included. You can just put the reference list at the back page of the document, right? The final page of the document. But again, you have to follow the procedure of the MUN that is organized by every single MUN institution that may have different requirement, right? Because I've been in an MUN where only footnotes are allowed, right? But there's also other MUNs that only allow reference list at the page of the document. So it does not have to be footnotes. All right. So the answer, yes, it's possible, but still you have to follow the MUN organizer, right? But usually if it is not regulated, if they don't explain about this, it's very, very possible, right? As long as you have a reference. It doesn't matter if it is on the reference list at the back, final page, or if it is in the form of footnotes at the bottom page of each page, right? All right, second question. May I ask, are we able to add new solution besides the country's solutions to the resolution part in the position paper? The answer is yes. So there are two solutions, right? The one that your country already has, and maybe a solution that you personally as a person just propose to your country, which is okay, as long as it does not violate your country's interest. So it doesn't always have to be a real solution that already is implemented or to be implemented by the government of your country. It doesn't always have to be like that. It can also be a new solution that you think personally is good, and then it does not violate the country's interest, then it's fine. You can put it as your country's national interest. Remember, this is MUN. This is where you get creative, right? This is where you get innovative about solution. You can put any kind of solution as long as it is relevant to your country's interest. If your country agrees with vaccination and then you propose a solution that does not allow vaccination, that it will not be possible. All right. But if your country agrees with vaccination and then your version of the solution is to make the vaccination free, for example, for everyone, then it is possible, right? Because it does not violate the fundamental principle of that country's interest, which is to allow vaccination. Whether it is free or not, it is something that you can be creative on. So it's okay for you to regulate your way, right, to find a solution. All right, another question. Which one comes first, country stance or pass action? Definitely country stance. Pass action is the one that is made by the institution, right? The council. Country stance is individual. It's every country has their own, right? As a country, you have to fight for your country stance, fight for your country's interests, right? Others can come next. All right. That's the fundamental of sovereignty. All right. Sovereignty in terms of prioritizing it. In terms of writing it, the structure, definitely pass action first, as we have explained earlier. As you can see on the paper itself here, right? This is the flow, right? I'm just going to put numbers on this. Topic, pass action, country stance, and solution, right? You already see the example previously, right? Just follow that. This is the flow of the structure of the position paper. All right, I hope it's answered. Now, all right, since we are approaching 3 o'clock, what makes a good position paper? Definitely the first one, you have to make it on track, right? Follow the rules, right? If the organizer says that you have to make a footnote, the one that is on the bottom of the page, then you have to make a footnote. If the organizer says there's only 1 page maximum, then only make 1 page maximum, right? If it says 1 page maximum, including the footnote, then make it as short as possible so that it fits on the 1 page structure, all right? Comprehensive, right? Consisting of national background, national policy, action from the past, right? You have to be precise, right? Give clear arguments. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Don't be too elaborative and making it not relevant, right? Make it precise, make it to the point, right? Make it on point to the solution that you want to cover, right? When doing research, you have to have all of these 6 aspects, right? Profile, status, past actions, past conventions, right? There are 2 different things. Past actions means the concrete activity. Conventions is the document. All right. Policy, the next one is policy, and then the last one is solution. All right. So policy means your country's regulations or country's interest, right? Policy is the concrete form of your country's interest. For example, if your country's interest is agreeing with vaccination, the policy is to make vaccination research center, for example, in each city, right? That's concrete, right? Beneran ada, kelihatan pakai mata, it's visible to our eyes. This is their policy, right? But the interest is the norm, the principle. What kind of principle, what kind of belief that this country has towards vaccination? Oh, this country agrees with vaccination. The policy to support that is to make vaccination hospitals, right? Vaccination research centers in each city, right? So that's the definition of, and also the difference between policy and interest, right? Basically the same thing. It's just a matter of whether it is concrete or not, whether it is visible to the eyes or not, right? Last one, as usual, is the solution, right? There's no need elaboration on this. Basically, solutions mean methods that can tackle the problem or make the problem go away. Comprehensive solution, 5 W's, 1 H, 5W, 1 H, right? What, why, where, when, who, how, right? I think this needs not to be explained because it's already too self-explanatory, right? The what is the object, the why is the reason, the where is how the solution will be implemented in particular place, when is about the time, who is the one that will be responsible, right? If you say that we have to allow vaccination, then who will be the leading institution that will be responsible on this? Should it be the Ministry of Health? Should it be the Ministry of Domestic Affairs, for example? So how do you want to build the solution? The how part is the methodology, right? The formulation, the analysis, how you will do it. Will you do it by putting it in one ministry? Is it a one ministry job, or it is a job? Is it a job that should be handled by several ministries, right? Special tips. First one is out of the box. Be creative, right? Be out of the box, right? Try to find fresh ideas. Remember, this is MUN. Yes, it's about country's interests. Yes, it's about your country's stance, but be creative, right? Try to provide solutions that are not there already, right? And then enrich your data, right? Try to use the most updated facts, the most updated research, right? So that everyone can understand the gravity of the discussion. And then you rely on facts that are new. Do not rely from facts that are coming from 1990s, for example. Try to use the most updated data and facts to support your arguments, right? Okay, so I've already checked your homework, right? Thank you for everyone who sends your homework personally to me through WhatsApp chat. I already love your homework, right? You understand the research, right? The way you can research. And then there's also another homework, but again, remember that this is not obligatory, right? Kalau nggak bisa nggak apa-apa. You don't have to do it if you're busy, right? But for all of you who are free and willing to learn about position paper, you can make your position paper, right? For 1 page only minimum, right? You can build 2 page, 3 page, but I'm only asking you to do just 1 page, right? And put all the structures that we have learned today, right? And then try to make the best position paper ever, right? Try to make it the best that you have ever made, right? Kapdur, negaranya apa? Any country, right? Kapdur, topiknya apa? Any topic, right? Just choose any topic, any country that you want, that you love, right? And try to build a position paper from that, right? So find your own topic, find your own country, and then you can make a position paper. Once finished, you can send it to me. I will review it, I will evaluate it, and I will tell you if there's any mistake, and I will tell you if you make already a good position paper, right? Okay, that's all for today. Any questions before I end the session, since we have already approached 3 o'clock? Any question? Or maybe you want to ask about other topics besides position papers, also allowed. This is the time for you to ask questions. Okay, I'll wait for 2 minutes. Yeah, for 2 minutes. All right, there's one about the country profile. How deep should it be? Definitely not too deep, and also not deep, right? Just try to figure out the portion of the country profile itself. If you think that you have to put as many profiles possible about your country, then do it. But if you think that, nah, this is not really relevant, then don't make it too much. All right. So in MUN, there is no practical limits, right? There is no, you have to make it this far, you have to make it this far. There's no exact limitation on that, right? So try to figure out the depth of the profile of your country, right? So in MUN, we are going to learn about discussing that, right? So there is no such thing as, you know, should we make 5 solution or should we make 6? It really doesn't matter, everyone. You can make just one, you can make just two, you can even make 10, but at the end of the day, not every solution will be implemented, right? Because you have to figure out others' perspective as well. All right, so that's how MUN goes, right? There's no such thing as this particular number of solution or this particular, sentences or paragraphs. No, so you have to make it as relevant as possible, but you can still refer to samples of position paper, just like the one that I have presented earlier. You can use that as a reference, right, to see how deep the profile is and other aspects as well. Nope, there's definitely not every solution will, and it will satisfy everyone, right? There is no such thing as a solution that satisfies everyone. So only stick to the majority. Try to make as many countries as possible. Remember, your job in MUN is not to please everyone, right? Because there will be countries that disagree with you. All right. Not every country is Indonesia. Not every country uses Pancasila as their fundamental principle. So your job is not to make everyone agree with one solution. No, you can just make a solution that is agreeable to as many countries as possible, but make sure it does not violate Pancasila or UUD 45 if you are representing Indonesia, right? If you are representing other countries, try to find the Pancasila of that country, try to find the constitution of that country, and then try to figure out whether the solution that you are proposing, if it is new, try to figure out whether it violates or not. Make sure it does not violate your country's interest. Kabdur, if there's a country that disagrees with us, what should we do? There's nothing you could do actually. You could persuade them. Ya bisa aja dibujuk buat setuju sama kita, but you cannot determine that country's final choice, right? If that country finally agrees with Malaysia, for example, and does not agree with us, then what else can we do? There's nothing we can do, right? In MUN, remember, your job is to protect your national interests as well as accommodate others' perspective from other countries, as many as possible, right? Okay, another question. How can we send the homework? You can send it personally to me, right, through the WhatsApp chat, and I will try to review it, the document, right? I'm gonna comment and I'm gonna give examples of suggestions that you can put on your paper. So just send it personally to me. No, 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 you should not quote from other countries' president or important people if it is about position paper, yeah. Because why would you quote from other countries' important people, right? So make sure to only quote from your country's influential people, since this is your country's position paper, not others, all right? Unless you're talking about a solution that is connected to a particular person from outside of the country, then that's okay. But still, you have to prioritize people from your country when it comes to quoting in position paper. All right. But if it is for discussion, then it's fine. All right, everyone, any other question? Whenever you have a question, just feel free to ask me. If you're asking outside of the class, make sure to ask as, as relevant as possible. I'm going to try to answer the question if I can, and if I'm available, if I'm online, and maybe we can discuss on that for the next class. All right. Okay, I see one. Oh no, it's from Lisa. All right. Everyone, you can see the Zoom chat box. There's a message from Nisa, one of our committees. It's about your absence, right? Buat absennya, presensi, and also your feedbacks. If you think that there's something that can be improved from the way I teach in every class, I'm very open to critics, right? If you think that Kapdur, you should do this, Kapdur, maybe you should do A, B, or C, you can put it on the link that Lisa just sent, right? It's for the best of all of us, right? So I can improve and your interest can be accommodated too. Right. I think that's all for today. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week again, yeah, in on Monday in the same hour, right? From 2 to 4 or 3:30, depending on the issue, right? So we will see next week, and there will be no voting since we have already voted on that. And the homework, this one, you can screenshot this, or there's actually no need to screenshot because the file is already sent to the group. You can just open that anytime you want. And if you have any question, you can ask on the group, or maybe if you were too shy, you can ask personally to me to the WhatsApp chat. All right, everyone, you already know my contact. You can chat me at any time. You can chat me at 3 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning. Just chat me anytime, but probably I will not be answering 24/7 because probably I will be sleeping, or maybe I'm on the bathroom. So just send me and then I will try to reply as fast as possible. All right. All right, that's for today. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you on next week. Dadah. Makasih ya semuanya ya.
Thank you very much, Kak.
Sama-sama.
Thank you, Kak.
Yoi.